Did you know that VeChain is allegedly one of the few top major blockchains out there that has supposedly and allegedly, hypothetically, never ever had any sort of downtime or any sort of nonsense like that? Now that's pretty impressive. Now that's not according to me. This was actually a post by Alex, who is from France, who is a very prominent figure in the Algorand community. And Algorand, by the way, is another layer one blockchain, but I'm just saying still, that right there was a very impressive post indicating, I think if anything, just how VeChain, compared to a lot of projects out there in the top 100, it just hasn't really seen any sort of nonsense or downtime, so far at least. Now we'll get into this in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice and even though I am not telling anyone to anything. Now, if we take a look at this chart right here, we'll see that, for instance, something like Solana, of course we know it's been down before. That's no secret. Now it's improved a lot, but I'm just saying, at least according to this chart, it indicates that. Now we also see something like, for instance, in the case of Sui, which is no surprise. I mean, Sui just recently had an issue, allegedly. It was a downtime or whatever. So when it comes to that, we know that. Now there's a bunch of other things that they posted when it comes to this chart, and I could go on and on and on, but it's just going to be very boring. But long story short, VeChain is one of the few out there when it comes to the top and major blockchains that has never really experienced any sort of nonsense or issues or downtime like that. Keep in mind, VeChain, according to some people out there, is oftentimes considered the Toyota of blockchains. Why is that? It's because much like the Toyota Camry, much like the Toyota Corolla, much like the Prius, and much like the Tacoma, which oftentimes people consider very reliable, VeChain, ever since 2018, allegedly has seen a total of 0 network outages. Ever since 2018, 0 network outages. We're talking about like 8 years ago. That's the thing. So in over half a decade, we haven't seen any sort of downtime when it comes to the VeChain Thor blockchain. Wow, that's pretty impressive right there. Did they get someone at Toyota to kind of, build the VeChain Thor blockchain? I don't know, maybe, who knows? I'm just speculating, I don't know for sure, but I'm just saying, in a pure hypothetical. Wouldn't surprise me though. Maybe they took someone from Toyota, an engineer, and said, hey, you make reliable cars. Why don't we make a reliable blockchain? Why don't you help build one? No, I'm just joking. I don't know if they did that, but it's just a pure analogy, right? But besides that point, when we take a look at the VeChain Thor blockchain being that reliable, that requires a lot of, I guess, planning, a lot of engineering, and also I think a lot of kind of intent in that sense, because usually things are reliable by design in some cases. So of course they had to design it to be that way, right? Other places out there, maybe they don't really prioritize this, but VeChain apparently does. Now, why could this matter? Well, it's because, especially when it comes to the use case of AI, that is really going to matter a lot, because they usually, and what I mean by they is that, typically developers, they want a place that is reliable. Because, again, they're doing very important things. Of course, they don't want it to break down like every once in a while. It's like, for instance, having a sports car, okay, it's cool, but if it breaks down every 10,000 miles, what's the point? I don't want that. Give me the RAV4, right? The Toyota RAV4. I'd rather take that over a sports car that breaks down every 10,000 miles. I don't want that. The VeChain Thor blockchain being reliable, it's really going to matter a lot, I think, moving forward. And a lot of people like to say, oh, VeChain, they're really focused on AI recently. They keep talking about it. What makes you think they can even handle that sort of AI adoption? Or if that wave were to come into this space in a massive way, they say, oh, what makes you think VeChain can handle that? Well, I point to the VeChain Thor blockchain. That's the thing. Other projects out there, they say that they're focused when it comes to AI, but they don't have the infrastructure. That's the thing. So how can they build a 50-story building if their foundation is only for a 5-story building? That's what I wonder sometimes. That's the thing. That's the analogy that I have, actually, because when it comes to VeChain, clearly the VeChain Thor blockchain has showcased, right, that it's been reliable for quite a while now. And in terms of energy consumption, it's not considered to be that bad anyways. So again, if we take a look at that right there, why does this matter? A lot of these AI developers, they want something that's not only reliable, but we do know that when it comes to AI, allegedly it does use a lot of energy. So if there is a place that doesn't inherently use that much energy to begin with, wouldn't that make it a practical place for AI projects? That's the thing. Only time will tell though. But I'm not necessarily worried because at least the infrastructure is there. it might take quite a while to have that mass adoption. Like what we've seen inherently when it comes to Toyota in the past, took quite a while to kind of build that reputation for being reliable. But eventually, after that happened, we saw things really just take off when it comes to Toyota. So when it comes to something like VeChain, mass scale adoption typically, in some cases, doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow build, but the foundation has to be there first. So I do like that when it comes to VeChain because they're focused on the fundamentals in order to maybe receive that mass scale adoption later on down the line. Mass scale adoption typically happens in a place where oftentimes it is very favorable for developers to build on. So the VeChain Tor blockchain, I don't see why it's so bad, in my opinion. Now, people like to say, oh, but VeChain is just a random project that's focused primarily on supply chain management. That's lame. You know, to each their own, right? But when I take a look at the VeChain Tor blockchain and I take a look at VeChain's somewhat very vocal and very loud emphasis when it comes to AI as of late, I don't think it is a one-trick pony by any means. I think, if anything, VeChain has multiple pathways, right? If it's focused on supply chain management, that's the bread and butter when it comes to VeChain. That's the thing. That's their macaroni and cheese. It works. It's a classic. A lot of people like it. We already know that. But when it comes to AI, now that's kind of a different thing. That's like the tuna sandwich. Because VeChain isn't really known for a tuna sandwich. It's not really known for an AI. But VeChain, if its supply chain management narrative doesn't really work out, they have AI as one of their narratives. But if that doesn't really work out, they have supply chain management. So they have a plan A and a plan B. It's like no different than a restaurant having a lot of items in the menu. Some people may like a certain item, some people may not. That's the thing. It really depends. So when I take a look at something like VeChain, it kind of gives me the vibe a little bit of a restaurant because it has several options. That's the thing. But yeah, besides that point though, people like to say, wow, VeChain is cooked. Take a look at the market cap being around 500 million. Okay, I understand that. But I don't think it's really cooked, by the way, because if we take a look at VeChain, keep in mind, it's ranked 81st in the world as of right now. This is not the only project out there having a pullback. Keep in mind, a project that is in the top 100, how is that considered necessarily cooked? I mean, it has a historical track record, not to mention it's not the only project having a pullback. So what? Suddenly, Bitcoin having a pullback is okay, it's normalized, but then suddenly when it comes to VeChain, it's not? How does that make sense? VeChain is not the only one having a pullback, but on the contrary as well. Is a pullback really such a bad thing though? Is like the dip necessarily so bad? Well, it depends who you ask, but for me, I don't mind the dip, if that makes sense. Give me the dip when it comes to my chicken tenders, but also give me the dip here. I don't mind that. You know what I mean? Now, not every single person is going to like the dip, but I like it. Case in point, if we take a look at VeChain as of right now, again, like I mentioned before, we're around a 500 million market cap. What was the market cap back in December 2024? Around 5 billion. We're approximately 10 times lower than that. Wow, that's the thing. That's really impressive in my opinion. Not in a bad way though, because people like to say, oh, is the pullback impressive? Not that. What I mean by that is I find it pretty impressive that we are currently around 10 times more than that. So it means that if we go back to that, you already know where I'm going. And that's Sizzler, the restaurant, because it kind of feels like a celebration a little bit. Now, if VeChain were to go to around a 5 billion market cap again, who knows, hypothetically, it wouldn't be considered an altcoin season by any stretch of the imagination, especially when it comes to the space, in my opinion, because December 2024 was not an altcoin season, in my opinion. But if anything, it kind of showcases just how low VeChain is currently. Let's think about this. Does anyone think that, let's say, August of 2025, does anyone think that was an altcoin season? No, not really. That was considered a little bit bearish, actually. Keep in mind, we're around 4 times lower. I repeat, again, around 4 times lower than where we were back in August of 2025. Wow. 4 times lower than August? That's really ridiculous. But even besides that, let's think about this as well. Did you know that actually back in June of 2020, again, I repeat, June of 2020, so approximately 6 years ago, the market cap when it comes to VeChain was around 500 million. So this market cap right here are levels we once saw back in 2020. Let's just let that sink in. If I can dollar cost average in 2026, but at 2020 levels, I don't think I'd complain. Now, I'm only dollar cost averaging once a month though, but I'm not telling anyone to do anything, but I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward when it comes to VeChain. So hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. It's Willie the Captain. I'm out. Peace. Bye.